Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. We do also podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, taking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. With my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Malaeulu, whakalofalahiatu, talofalava, and welcome to the Reads of Rosa podcast. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. She is the author of the recently released book, A New Dawn. Ta-da! Which is her dawn raid story. She is a consultant and editor for Lift Education Publishers. She's an editor and writer for instructional series for schools, such as the Ready to Read series and the Two Push series, just to name a few. It is my honor to welcome to the show mother, educator, and writer, Emeli Sione. Welcome.
Hello, Malolele.
Man, it's so great to have you on the show, and I honestly hope I didn't mess up any of your names there. So forgive me, Tongan community, if I messed up. So, man, how are you? How are you doing? How have you been?
I'm good. I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous because these interviews and just the whole journey so far has been kind of amazing, but also overwhelming. So I'm happy to talk away, I can talk the house down, but it's absolutely different when you're being interviewed and you've got a camera or a microphone in front of your face. So yeah. Like my kids said to me, just make sure you cut me off. Talk to me.
I won't do that. No. Honestly, yeah, that's what we're doing here. We're keeping it organic. We're just two friends just catching up, after a very long time. So I do appreciate your time. I know weekends are definitely family time. So this means a lot. And I've been looking forward to this for so long. I know.
Me too.
Watching everything since the book dropped and seeing all the interviews that you've been doing with Dahlia, and we'll talk more about that in the podcast interview.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been just so proud watching everything unfold, and so I've been waiting for this moment. I was like, my turn is coming. We got to let them do all the official stuff first. So yeah, thank you for being here.
Oh, Emeli. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's an honor.
So this is the part of the show where I ask our guests just to, before we launch into it, please give us a short introduction, shout out your villages and your family, your people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my name is Emeli Sione. Aholele is my maiden name that I was born with, and Sione is my married name. I was born in Alofi in Liverpool Hospital, the old Liverpool Hospital, and migrated to New Zealand when I was really young, around 3 years old. Migrated to New Zealand, Auckland. So I grew up in Auckland, in central Auckland, so lived between Pongipongi and Grayland, where my family still reside now. So basically we've lived in Grayland for, central Auckland for about 45 years and in Grayland for 38 years. So, and I, of course, met a Wellingtonian and then moved down here to Wellington in 2002, where I started work as an editor/project manager for Learning Media, what was known as a publishing company called Learning Media. And so I've been here since, and then decided around about 2010 to go into just contract work. So because we had our first child, and basically my children always, we always put them first. So I've worked around them, and that's why I've been able to be a consultant editor and do contract work, and as well as write for Lift Education, for the Ministry of Education, but also have done some work for departments of education in the Pasefika and Pacific. Yeah. That's amazing. nutshell.
That's amazing. You know, like when I was researching, because, you know, have to do some research on the guest. Don't want to be that guy who just rocks up and just makes it up. But, you know, like I was really intrigued by this, you know, like the work that you do with Lift Education, but even the ministry, you know, I was like, I found ESOL resources,
yeah.
you know, instructional books. And I was like, how did you get into that? Because I know that, you know, books and education, super, super important. I mean, were you a teacher before you got into that? Or was it more, you were just always involved with books? And
so while I was finishing off my master's at Auckland University, I got a phone call from Wellington and learning media there, Margaret Smith, one of my first bosses, and Don Long, another boss as well as my mentor. And I was finishing off my master's in bilingualism, literacy development and bilingualism. So, you know, having the mother tongue or being strong in one language and being able to transfer those skills into another language. And and they approached me and asked me to apply for a job, which was the editor/project manager role for what was known as the Pasefika resources, language resources, which was tupu. And that was published in 5 Pasifika languages, which was Cook Islands Māori, Niuean, Samoan, Tokelau, and Tongan. And I just thought, oh, hey, you know, at the time, my boyfriend's in Wellington. Might as well kill, you know, 2 birds with 1 stone. So I went for the job and I got it and decided to make the move down. So, you know, I never thought I'd get into publishing. I was more wanting to get into the policy side of education, the psychology side of education, trying to make a difference in those areas. But, you know, obviously God had different plans and brought me down to Wellington. And then that's when I started working in publishing and you know, books that you see in school, like ready to read, and you're like, oh my gosh, is this how you make books? Because there's an assumption that you just get a story, you like it, put some pictures together, and then there's a book. But there's a whole different process. And of course, with publishing, there's the educational side, and then there's the trade side, and there's guidelines for both. So, so that's how I got into producing those resources. And producing, publishing work. Yeah.
That's amazing. Like I've never met anyone who does what you do. So I was just so intrigued that I was just like, oh my God, are there more of you? You know, because then like, do you connect, like through that work, are you connecting, like, are you sending people out into the community to, you know, because you mentioned guidelines, which means that books should have certain elements to it. So how much of a, like, are you the one that kind of oversees all of that and make sure you follow the guidelines, or are you the person that kind of like sends out people into the community to meet with community leaders and, you know, getting that authentic feedback? Like what, I'm sorry, I'm excited, but can you
that's okay.
Kind of like take us through that a little bit?
So the whole process is, so with educational publishing, you either have your story sent in. So you, as a writer, you write a story and you send it in, or what we have been doing lately is commissioning. So we've got a pool of writers, and we're always looking for new Pasifika writers. We're always looking for Pasifika contributors, because we also need illustrators, and we need photographers. We need people to, you know, in order to make Pasifika content or Pasifika language resources authentic, we need as many Pasifika people to work on it. So the process is, you know, for example, we commission somebody, we have an idea based on what the criteria is or what the theme is for that time. And then we'll reach out to our Pasifika writers or to our general writers who contribute, and then they'll write a story. And what then happens is they send it in to the editor. So that's normally a series editor or one of the editors that's been allocated to work on that project. And they will mold it and shape that text, because it usually comes at text stage, molds and shapes it into what we think is a pretty good draft. We send it back to the writer and we go, what do you reckon? And sometimes it comes back and forth, but we still have to have those guidelines, because with educational publications, there's still things that we have to keep within, and it kind of sounds a little bit sad, but you have to kind of, it's in a box, unfortunately, because you got to make sure that it's not racist. You got to make sure that it's not sexist. You got to make sure that it's gender balanced, because there's a lot of changes that have happened over time. You got to make sure that there's nothing that's going to offend religious groups. You got to make sure that someone who's going to read it is not going to be so overly offended by it that it affects them. So those are some of the things that we have to think about. We don't always get it right, and that's the honest truth. We've had some times when we've kind of got it wrong, and we have to own it. It's important that you own it, and we try and fix it. With trade publishing, it's a little bit better because the ocean is wide, and you still keep your guidelines in the front of your mind, but at the same time you're able to push the boundaries. You're able to kind of just really push those boundaries and challenge people and get them to think and get them to start talking about stuff. Both sides of publishing should both do the same as well in their kind of guidelines. I hope I'm making sense here. So,
oh my God, I'm so I'm so like, you've got me. I'm like so engaged in this. So please,
So I'm expecting some stories to come from you about this conversation.
I'm so curious to know, like, let's say someone's listening and they're also intrigued by this, and they're excited and they want to know more about this. Like, how would one get into such a role? Like, what qualifications would you need to study to gain, to be in this industry, like to be part of that?
Well, so in Wellington, there are a couple of publishing courses that we have, and the one that I've had the opportunity to work through is held at Whitirea, and they have a publishing course, and it looks at what you do as an editor, it looks what you do as a publisher, and just goes through the process. And so I think it's really important to have a good level of English, but also if you have another language like Pasifika language or Te Reo, that's even better. The other thing is also that I feel that's important is life experience. Sometimes if you I think sometimes that's one of the blessings or one of the advantages that you sometimes have over Palangi is that if you have that life experience, but also Pasifika or in your community that they're trying to reach, that's a plus, because then you're not having to go out, like reach out to 1,000,001 people, because you already got that connection. So one of the things that I have is that even though I'm consultant editor and I look at stuff, if there are things that I think, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, then I'll go and ask the pool of people that I have and I've worked with over the years to make sure, can you just check this? And the thing that you have to understand sometimes when you're developing resources in New Zealand is the experiences here are slightly different from a Pasifika person living in America, Pasifika person living in Australia, England. There's similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. And I think it's really important that you know that and bring that to the development of that resource, because I'll share an example, and one of them was the use of the word papa. So in our family, or that I've heard in New Zealand growing up, the use of the word papa is for grandfather. And just in the last recent years, I've just, seen stories that where papa, and my brother is called this, he's dad, but his daughter calls him papa. And so, when that comes up in a story, it's really important to put a little note in the book to say, while we know that papa is associated with grandpa, it is also associated with an endearment for your dad or even an uncle or someone close to you. And so, and in the past, we've never been able to do that. We've just produced the book and put it out, but it's been a lot more explanations and just trying to help people understand why there's a little bit of a difference even within Pasifika groups as well. So good level of English, but also just a love for books, for and love for kids as well, your audience, knowing your audience as well.
Man, I'm just wow. Honestly, this is so new to me, and I'm glad I got to ask this question and to hear you share, because I'm sure there are people tuning in and it's probably their first time to hear the process and development of such resources. Educational resources, super important. I want to get we're going to come back to this, but I do want to talk about fam. If you are watching us right now or you are listening, I mean, I've been dropping this all the time. Like, I've been sharing a new dawn. I mean, I'm so grateful to Dahlia. I am writing my review, and I'm going to drop the review next week before we drop your episode for this. Yeah, man, this is you must be so proud.
I am.
Of yourself, like, first and foremost. No, because authors, they don't really like to acknowledge their own. It's about the collective, it's about the village, it's about everyone behind them. But before we launch into the importance of this educational resource, the value in this, I just want to say you must be so proud of yourself.
I am. I've like you said, it's that whole humility thing, and as Pasifika, where, and I do that, anyway, you celebrate with your village, you do celebrate with your family and your people. And so, I am proud. Deep inside.
Good. Like, honestly, no, I wanted you to make that clear before we begin, before I get into the questions. I just
that's
think
okay.
Because
it's funny, because I've written books already, as I said before, and this is, of course, the first one that's kind of really out there, and so I've had to readjust my thinking, and going, and when people say, well done, and I have to go, oh, thank you so much, but really I'm like,
you're like, oh my god, well, as you've mentioned, I mean, just within your work as well, like you're an editor, publisher, all that, but you also write. You've as you mentioned with your role, the work that you do, you have written many of these resources, which was exciting. When I was like Googling and researching you, I was like, wow, okay, so this is the other side to your writing. But let's talk about A New Dawn. So your book was released on the 1st of August this year. And if you follow Dahlia Malaeulu, Mila's books on Instagram, on Twitter, we've been putting this on blast. It's totally out there, super important. This was released 1 year after the Dawn Raid's apology from the New Zealand government. So for those who don't know, or maybe those who are not from New Zealand, a year ago, August 1st, 2021, a year after, it was basically the New Zealand government, they offered a formal apology to Pasifika communities for the discriminatory implementation of the immigration laws of the 1970s that led to the events of the Dawn Raids. So, my question to you, Emeli, is you watched the apology. What were you thinking? What were you feeling as you watched that?
Well, I actually cried. Sorry, I don't mean to get emotional. I still do. And I thought of my grandparents. I thought especially of my grandfather. And I just sat there quietly listening. And then I thought of my parents. And I just felt that it was needed, because the thing is, I can only speak for myself, and I can only speak for my experience. Everybody else will either have similar experiences or different experiences, because the thing about the Dawn Raids is a lot of it happened during the early hours of the morning, but it also happened throughout the whole day. So and people don't really get to hear that. So I just thought of them, and then it just took me back to that time, and I cried. And I remember saying to Dahlia that the healing has to start. I can choose to hold on to the guilt that I felt. And I felt that guilt for a really long time. In fact, it was, I don't know how to explain this, but it was so deep inside, and I was getting on with life. And then every time I saw something to do with the dawn raids, it would trigger me. And I'd either be in a, good mood or bad mood or upset about things, because I started having these visions or these memories. And I even asked myself, oh my gosh, what are these just dreams, or, just stuff, that's just popping into my head. And it wasn't until after a certain time in life, about 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, hang on a minute, I've got to sit down and I've got to actually really think about this. And then when the apology came, I just knew, it's time, because the story itself has been in progress for the last few years, 5, 6 years ago.
Right.
And it's just has gone through its changes. And and then after that, I just thought the time is right, because 5, 6 years ago, I approached a publisher and asked if they would consider it. And rightly so. They said, oh, we don't think it's the right time. We don't think that New Zealand's ready for it. And seriously, I go, when is New Zealand ever ready for anything that has to do with their dark history, anything that is remotely associated with pain that they cause people, the government. And so I was disappointed, but I let it sit. And then late last year, I had a chat with Dahlia, and I remember saying to her, hey, I've written this, there's a few drafts, and I've written it, and I've submitted it to a publisher. And but have a look, because one of the things about publishing, and when you've got colleagues, is that we share our stories. So Dahlia sometimes shares things with me, and I share things with her. So I just had to let her have a look over it, and she had a look over it. She goes, right, when you're ready, we'll do it. We'll get it. I really want to publish this. And I had to actually sit and think about it, because to me, it's a very deep story. I'm actually putting my family on full blast. And I just knew that there could be a positive reaction and a negative reaction. So, and just with that apology that came, I just knew, right, this is the time. And so the work's pretty much getting it together and developing it fully to what it is now.
How do you deal?
How do you heal? How do you heal?
How do you deal, and how do you heal?
Well, I guess so it's really interesting, because it's made me actually stop and look at my life in the last. So I'm 48 years old, and I came when I was roughly about 3 years old to New Zealand. So I've been in New Zealand for about 45 years, and I've looked over my life over that time. And there are, my early 20s, probably right up to my 30s, actually before I had my children. I was an angry person. I remember my husband, when we first started going out, he said, why do you have such a big chip on your shoulder? And I just thought to myself, don't be ridiculous. I don't have a big chip on my shoulder. But it's interesting, because after I had my kids, and that kind of, to me, my husband might disagree, but to me, it kind of softened me up a bit, because I now had children to be responsible for, and how I act and how I speak and all of those things, they're watching me. And when I look back, I just realized, wow, I was an angry person, and I lashed out a lot. I was angry. But then I went to university, and my eyes opened up, because, as pasefika, you're taught that you don't challenge Palangi people, you don't challenge your adults, you don't challenge the church, everything that happens to do with God, everything, you believe it, you live it, you breathe it. I went to university, and I was allowed to be a critical thinker. I was allowed to be angry at the way that I was treated as a pasifika person growing up in New Zealand. The racist words that I used to be called. And I just want to make something really clear, because it wasn't just racism towards me from pasifika, but it was even from my own not pasifika, from Palangis, but it was even from my own people, pasifika people, because it was almost like the environment that we were growing up in. It's the us against them. And we should be together, but really not together, because we've got our own worries.
Levels of elitism, right? There's so many different levels and aspects of our own cultures and religions that build us up to be like, you have to be successful, but you have to do it this way, which is kind of that Western Eurocentric construct. But then you can't be too good, because then you're being bots, right? You can't be like, can't be going to uni and question to say, oh, sorry, carry on. I get you.
But it's true, because you couldn't go to university and bring home what you learned because you're a fiapoko, you're a fiapoto. I had family saying, oh, Emeli, don't get too big, your shoes, and, you just remember where you came from. And I'm like, you're constantly reminding me, and I constantly remember, where I'm coming from. But what made me try and turn that anger and push through to fight or advocate, or even just prove a point that as Pasifika, we're intelligent people. We can speak for ourselves. We can fight for ourselves. And that was when a family member made a comment to my mum saying, oh, because mum ended up being a solo mum when I was about 10 years old and raised 6 kids by herself. The impact of what happened to our family when my grandfather left was massive on our family, because Dad had always relied, as in terms of my interpretation and what I saw growing up, was Grandpa was the man of the house. He was the one that kept the family together. And when you take that out and you realize, oh my gosh, I now have to be responsible, I have to be a father, and that was hard on him. And at the time, I was angry. But as I got older and I got to talk to him more and fully understand what he had to cope with, it was massive. It was a massive responsibility. And so I just remember thinking to myself, you already get a hard enough time from other members of your family and other members of the family. We're already getting a hard enough time being Pasifika, trying to survive in New Zealand, because I'm half Niue and half Tongan. And then you've got to survive in the Palangi world. So there's 3 different worlds that we're trying to fit into. And so hearing this person say to my mum, oh, you know what, your kids are just going to grow up and be, like you, solo mum on the benefit. And I just thought to myself, you're one of ours. You should be supporting us. We should be supporting one another and uplifting one another, not pounding you down to the ground because you think you're having a bad day. And I just remember saying to my mum that day, I said, I promise you, Mum, that I will make you proud. I promise you that I will work hard to look after you and the kids. And that just drove me, and it's continued to drive me to this, to this day. And that's just something that's pushed me to try and, help my kids, my own children, about what it means in terms of your responsibility to your family, the resilience that our people have come through. Because to me, we're resilient people. My grandparents got taken away, and they could have stayed away, but they ended up going through like years of having to go through the proper process and getting their paper to come back to New Zealand, and stayed in New Zealand until they passed away. Grandma passed away last year, and Grandpa passed away over 10 years ago. So, yeah, so that has just driven me, and along the way, I've had to allow myself to be healed, turning the anger and the pain into something positive, as a tool to say, right, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to university. I'm going to work, and whatever that job is, because we always go, oh, go to university. It's the way out. Well, actually, not really. As you've gotten older, some of our amazing people have not gone to university and are successful business people, successful people. So it's about what you take out of life, and it's about what you take in terms of your knowledge, and really, steaming ahead. And that's how I've come to where I am today. And my focus has always been, my family. It was mum, dad, the kids, my extended family. Then my children came with my husband, and they've just added to the big village that I'm privileged and honored to be part of. So, yeah.
You're doing fine, by the way. You're doing fine. You're doing great, actually. There is a Tongan version of the book. I hope I don't mess this up. Ko e Pongipongi Fo'ou. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I? My apologies, Tongan community, if I said that wrong.
No,
but
that's
there
correct.
is a Tongan version of this book. Tell us why it was important to have that Tongan version.
So a few reasons. One, because it was my Tongan grandparents, and the other reason is because we wanted it to reach out to our Tongan community, because, as you know, during the Dawn period, they were taking people who were from Tonga, from Samoa, from Fiji, and all of those countries, or those 3 countries, don't sit under New Zealand governorship.
Right.
They rule on their own. And so the relationship between Cook Islands, Niue, and Tokelau is different, because they sit under
New Zealand,
Yeah, absolutely.
Access
and
to
then
resources.
And so, of course, with Tonga and Samoa, we don't have that. So we don't have that that protection. We didn't have that protection. We still don't. Well, in terms of the paper, the immigration paperwork. So, but and Dahlia said, let's do a Tongan version, because it is based on your Tongan grandparents, and we want people such as my dad, whose English is a second language, and the version that we gave him was the Tongan version. And I have to admit, I was really, really nervous, so nervous. We launched the book on the 1st. Not the 1st, sorry. We launched the book on the own launch time.
Right.
And my dad rang the next day, and he cried and he cried and he cried. He cried because the story was produced, but it brought back a lot of memories. He read the story, and then he rang me, and he was over the moon. So it was different emotions. And my mum. So the great thing about my parents is that dad is Tongan, but he's also part Niuean, because his mum's half Niuean. So, and mum's Niuean, but they both speak each other's languages fluently. And mum speaks Niuean, Tongan, dad Niuean, Tongan, and mum speaks, of course, English really well. So I'm quite privileged to have. And so the work that I did in terms of my studies at university, I had my parents who were my educators. They were the ones who taught me at home. So though I could have done a little bit better in my language development.
Man, that's so
I apologize
cool.
to the Tongan community and the Niue community. Don't ask me. No. So so that's why we really wanted it to be in Tongan as well, so that those who couldn't read the English version could also read the Tongan version. Yeah.
This book is, I love the illustrations. I want to talk about, I want to come back and let's just have a break from, talking about your experience and why the story was written. Because I want to mention, because you've already mentioned Dahlia. I would like to shout out Mila's books, Dahlia, Malaeulu. I mean, she knows I'm such a fangirl. It's so bad.
She's got lots of fans. I've spoken to so many of them, and they've been amazing, just like you.
I love her heart for ᴅpasefika, for children's books, for Atameti. And I was absolutely stoked when I learned that she was behind you, alongside, beside you, pushing you through this journey, in terms of publishing. She is the owner of Mila's books. Tell me what it was. Well, first of all, before we talk about the amazing team, your friendship with Dahlia, the importance of that in terms of this and I don't know.
It's really interesting that the journey that Dahlia and I have, because Dahlia's sister Melanie, so we were friends first. So Mel and her husband Tony went to university with my husband George, and Mel messaged me and said, "Hey, look, my sister is looking into wanting to publish, write and publish some books." And she said, "Is it all right if she gets in touch with you?" Because I was already working in the publishing world. So Dahlia got in touch with me, had a chat with me about what she wanted to do, and had to look over some paperwork with her. And so because of that, we started talking to each other, and she said, "Oh, can you have a look at this and see what you think?" And I go, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Or maybe change that." And and from there, because of her passion and her love for wanting to develop resources for pasefika, because the thing is with educational resources is that we publish them. They go out to schools or educational institutions, and they go to the library. And unless you're a teacher or educator or anyone to do with schools, and those resources, but they're not out in the public. And when you go into a library, you couldn't see resources that children, or even as parents or pasefika, you could identify with, or, there's a book, it's about, pasefika people. And so, so started the journey for, Dahlia and with Mila's books, and she can talk to you about her journey. I don't want to go into the area.
I've really heard it, but I love
And then we so I've been doing some work for her, as well as doing some work for Lift Education, and then this is our first book that we've worked together, and I believe that I'm her first author that she's published under Mila's books. And it was great because when we were talking about the book, and I didn't want it to be just a book about my experience, because we both have educational backgrounds. We wanted it to be a book that educated people about what the Dawn Raids was, the experiences that pasefika went through. And it's just like a jigsaw puzzle or a timeline. And because, Dahlia added her bits in at the end, it just flowed. And so you got the Dawn Raids, you got Polynesian Panthers, you've got the apology, and then you got the example of someone who's lived and breathed it and is here today to talk about it. But again, that's my experience, and others haven't spoken about it. And it's interesting because I spoke to a friend of mine, and she said her dad went through it, but he doesn't talk about it. And, and that's their choice, that's their and I can fully understand it, because I was at that stage too. Didn't want to really talk about it or relive it, but I've just wanted to get it out there for the kids. But that's how our relationship, and we're working on some other projects coming up together, which is really exciting.
I'm excited. I can't
but I'm not going to go too much into it, because again.
I'm so excited to hear that. And I wanted to ask you, because the illustrations in here are amazing. I wanted to ask you about what it is like to work. I mean, obviously through your work, that's a different space in which you do have a pool of amazing pasefika people to, pull from, but I work with. But in terms of, you've got Dahlia there, you've got Dasi Solia, you got, illustrator, you got Liz Tui Morris. I mean, tell us about this amazing team. And the value of having all pasefika doing this together.
I think the great thing about it is, is authenticity. It's produced by, the resources are produced by pasefika for pasefika. And it's not just for the kids, it's also for their families, because we're all learning together. You know, you've got Darcy who does illustrations, but he's also a teacher and he's been teaching for a while. You've got Liz who is a graphics designer, and she's been around for a long time, and she co-owns a design company herself. And the thing is also with Liz is that Liz is my eldest daughter's godmother and is named after her. So Liz interviewed me for my job at Learning Media. So she was there as part of the Pasefika group there, and we had an amazing group there. So, and then of course you got the wonderful and amazing Dahlia, who's the leader of this whole, you know, the vision. We just fit in with that vision, and when we go out into our families, into our own communities, the work doesn't stop when we come together. It continues when we go out. Just how we talk about it, and how we share our experiences. And the other thing is also what's so great is that even though I came to New Zealand at a young age, I'm still we're all still children of immigrants to New Zealand. And, you know, the story goes that our Pasefika people came to New Zealand for a better life, for better opportunities and better outcomes. And us four, are products of that, you know, and including yourself.
I want to talk about this line from the book, and it says, I soon discovered that New Zealand was only the land of milk and honey for the fair-skinned. Now, I want to talk about that line because, well, actually, let's talk about that line first, and then I'll add my other question. That really hit me, man. Like, I was like, okay, I cannot be crying before I get on this plane. Like, come on now. But it kind of, I'm sure, you know, obviously, as you've already said, this is your experience. But I'm sure when people read this, that it resonates. Man, this it hit me right here.
Well, it's because, you know, we're encouraged to go and get a good education, right? We're encouraged that if you go and get a good education, that's going to guarantee you to have a good job. That's going to guarantee you to have a good life, you know, and have all of these materialistic things. But that's not always the case. I mean, I soon discovered straight away that even with 2 degrees, the job, you know, some of the jobs that I really wanted to be part of, I wasn't going to get for all sorts of reasons. But sometimes it was blatant and it was straight up, I was just not the right color. And to make it a little bit even worse, I was a female and I was way too clever. You know, you're needing someone who is going to roll with you, but not challenge you.
Right. Got to be the yes person, right? The yes person.
And I'll be a yes person if it's going to benefit everybody. But I won't be a yes person if it devalues me as a person and what I bring to the table, and makes me be someone that I'm not. In everything that I try and do and always remember, I'm Pasefika first and foremost, and that I am a woman, and that's something that I absolutely cannot change. But when you come at me and you try to make me change my way of thinking so that it can benefit you when it actually is not going to benefit the community that you're supposed to be serving, then I would rather, you know, walk away. Or at other times I've tried to fight the power and I've you know, fight the power. And sometimes you have to be that person who stands out, and say things that are really uncomfortable for people. Because I was, you know, there's that image of the lion and then there's the cub, and you got to remember who's watching you all the time, because I just want to know that when it's time for me to go, that my kids will be confident in who they are. They will be strong in the person that they identify as, and not feel that they have to keep quiet every time they feel uncomfortable in their heart. And that's, and I've met a lot of kids like that. I've met a lot of adults like that. And it's about working with them to try and change that mentality. Not all of them want to listen, but heaps of them do too. So that line, I remember that, because when you started saying it, I thought that has to be page number 22, because you're made to feel like that. And sometimes I think some Balangi people don't realize that they're doing it until you point it out to them and they go, oh, I apologize, I didn't mean it to be like that. And so how do you work together to be able to help you be educated to know I'm not going to do that again the next time? I hope I've answered your question.
You
just
did.
going around.
I'm just quiet because I'm just taking it in. I'm feeling a lot of emotions and stuff. I'm thinking about education spaces, spaces in which education is like in the classroom, in educational institutions. It's it's hard. Like I think like
it is hard.
I work at an international school, so ever since 2020, like the pandemic started, and international schools have been called out for systemic racism, for just unjust practices in terms of hiring, not hiring of BIPOC folks who are more than qualified. As you're talking, I'm thinking about it, because in terms of international school spaces, and it's obviously coming from New Zealand, I have my experience there. Whenever I come home to New Zealand, like I feel like when you walk into a shop and then you see them looking in the mirror to it's those types of like things, they're following you around the store, or the way that people
stigmas.
Converse converse with you in this, as opposed to other those things. Whenever I come home to New Zealand, I'm always reminded of that, people's behavior, and I realize, oh God, it's still the same, in a lot of places. And then obviously living in Japan, there are many New Zealand educators here. There's like a lot of expats, many teachers who are, they've worked here for many years, and they're well respected. Pasefika, they're respected, and they're, because they know that if you're here working in Japan, you've got the qualifications. It's not necessarily you're an assistant language teacher. I mean, these are people who are working in high schools and universities and things like that. So, and then when you work in an international school on top of that, it's just difficult to navigate spaces where the dominant culture is still very, like with the whole systemic racism and anti-racism education, and all this talk about diversity and equity and inclusion and justice and liberation for all, all of that it's easy to talk about, and well, maybe not easy. It's easy to drop buzzwords, right? As in educational spaces, but it's the action. It's it's actually seeing is anything really being done, or is it just a lot of talk? So it's been such an interesting experience.
It's 2022, right?
Oh, for real.
And some of the stuff that I've described in the book was felt years ago. It's still happening now. You talk about, and it's fantastic you talked about those things, because that's been some of my conversations, and in fact, a lot of my conversations in the last few weeks, even before A New Dawn was produced. And that's, the stigmas that Pasifika people still have, the tags that we have. You can't walk into a certain shop in Newmarket without people following you, without, or even Ponsonby, without people looking at you and thinking, oh, this person's going to steal. Let's just watch them. I mean, but the thing is, it's not just in New Zealand. So my husband and I went to Spain a few years ago, 2007. He was, because he follows football and he loves football, and he loved and followed Barcelona. So we decided to go to Barcelona. And we ended up staying in this little area called Fontana. And I just thought to myself, yay, fantastic. But oh my gosh, I've felt racism in New Zealand, but the way that I felt the racism in Spain was a whole different level. They refused to serve us and exchange our money in the bank. This guy just laughed and it was horrible. I got, the daggers, daggers, because it was summertime. And when it's summertime, I go really dark. And so that did not help at all. And then we went into the shop, got followed, went into the Barcelona football sports shop. My husband went in to get changed, and the security guard went and laid on the floor and looked underneath to see what he was doing. And I just thought, I can't believe this. And their explanation was, so many immigrants come to Spain and they steal. And because we're the color of the immigrants, They just thought, oh, you're immigrants. And I just thought, these poor people, I love Spain. I loved everything about it, but it was just that feeling of, you're different, and you're having to fight to say, well, I'm just a tourist. But that feeling that you're having to fight and to prove yourself, that still exists in New Zealand. Even here, there are days when I question myself and go, oh my gosh, am I good enough for that job? And to be honest with you, when I wrote this book, and Dahlia will tell you, I just thought, oh, is that book okay? I questioned myself and what I had worked with her to develop. I know exactly how you feel. Just the system is still, any system, the health system, the education system, the housing system, anything that includes our people is still very racist. There's still that invisible
divide, divide.
Yeah. And an invisible, let's have this is our criteria. We don't see it, but it's there. We know it's there. When some of our people apply for houses, okay, Islander, brown person, got too many kids, don't think you're going to be able to pay for the rent, you're a single mother, just things like that. And another example, I think I always talk about this and I need to stop. I was on the board of trustees for my children's school, and I was elected as the board chair, and I was the first woman of color and Pasifika descent. And I can tell you the feeling, there was excitement from some people, and it was blatant, oh my gosh, what is this person doing? Can she lead our school? And you can look at it and go, oh, they didn't have confidence in me. But for me as a brown person, my mind started working overtime. It's like, okay, you don't have faith in me. And it's not because you don't think I can to do the job. It's because, one, I'm brown, and two, I'm a woman. And I just thought I could either not accept it and back down, but I didn't. I actually took the job, and I thought, well, I'm sorry, you're going to be stuck with me for a little bit longer, because I was not there for you. I was there for the kids. It's always been about the kids. And as I said before, there are kids watching me. And if I back down and give up, then they'll do the same. It's like, oh, I'll just sit back. It's okay. I'll be the good little island woman, and I'll sit very quietly and I won't say anything. And the unfortunate thing is, and I know that some people are going to watch this and feel uncomfortable and angry about it, but we get that from our own people, our own men. And, if you want us to continue on and continue to be in spaces that our people deserve to be in, then you need to trust us and you need to support us and help us. Because when we go in, we're not going in as individuals. We're going in knowing that behind us, and this is what I love about some of the images with Te Ao Māori, with Māori, is your ancestors are right behind you. They are right behind you, and there's that saying, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Right. And I'm not wasting their time standing on their shoulders for nothing. I'm not, they didn't come to New Zealand. Our people didn't come to New Zealand in vain and wasted their time. And so it's really important for us to always remember that, Yeah, and I just want to encourage you that you always remember, behind you is a whole lot of people who support you and know and have absolute faith in you and what you do. So yeah, I'll be checking in with you to make sure that you.
Thank you. I do need that. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I've actually shared this, in meetings, and I've actually said that, and I'm sure half the time people are looking at me like, oh, she's so crazy. Like, I talk about how we carry our family names with us, even saying our names correctly, which, well, for any teacher, like, uppercut yourself if you're saying student names incorrectly.
Yes.
Like, one job, man, one job. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because it just makes me think, that I've shared this, and that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and that we carry our ancestors. It's a collective. We don't celebrate one person, we celebrate victory is for all. Like, and then if it's not success, then we like, it's always the collective, it's the village, it's the people. And I think people don't understand that. I think Palagi people, they just don't understand. And
I think and it's really important too, because that's our opportunity in their space to help them understand. And if they don't, we also have to be patient and know that for them it's going to be a process, because I know with some people, they do try to pronounce our names right, and unfortunately they get it wrong. And so we have to also support them and help them get it right. But if they continue to, like, after how many years, then sorry, sunshine, that's no excuse.
Yeah,
like tonight.
It's so, again, you're sharing all these things. It's so funny. You're sharing all these things that I'm like reminded of things at work, because it's so funny again that you mentioned that, because after years and years, because a colleague actually, she was like, it was so awkward, and it took a lot of courage for her, like, we talk and stuff, to do with work, but she came up to me when I was like Friday afternoon, and said, oh my God, I just wanted to apologize. And I was like, oh no, what happened? What did I do something wrong? What's going on? What happened? And she said, so I had to presented just real briefly at our staff meeting on Wednesday. And then she realized then, I guess the high school principal had kind of said my name, and she realized then she's been saying it wrong this whole time. Sis, don't even get me started. When I tell people Rosa, I shorten my name to Rosa, and people still say it incorrectly. And I remind them, it's like the Japanese, the vowels, Japanese vowels, like Rosa. It's so easy.
Because you know what?
Rosa.
I was walking around the house going, Lossa. Because I love that name.
No,
because I love that name.
My family, they call me Loss, like close friends. It's fine, honestly. But I was, I was very surprised, and I knew it took a lot of courage. I appreciated it, is what I'm saying. I really appreciate it. So she apologized, and she said, please correct me. And I thought, man, it took her a lot of courage to do that. But there are all these other people walking around here like calling me Rosa, and I'm like, why does the S sound like a Z? Like, it's not Rosa, it's Rosa.
You should record yourself and go, my name is
don't even get me started. And then I noticed on the document, every time they send out emails, they're starting to put my full name, and I go, cool. And I go in and correct it, because I'm like, how are you all gonna try and pronounce my full name? You can't even say Rosa. Okay, that's all. That was my spiel. That was my vent. My friends, my close friends at work, they know, man, I'm the biggest advocate for names. And when people are saying, people, it's like, okay, I get it. You can't say Rosa, but you better learn how to say my students' names. I'm one of those. Anyways, let me stop. I'm going off on a tangent. It's not about me.
No,
let me stop.
But it's so funny, because you know what? I was watching the game with my husband, and I had to listen. So we're switching back between the Sharks and I don't know what the other team, and the Bulldogs for league, and then the All Blacks in Argentina.
Right.
Oh my goodness! So with the, or maybe it was the league for women, and this guy just kept going Fonaki. Fo'ou. And I was
Oh
like,
my
he just
goodness.
kept dragging the four. And I said, it's not four, it's Funaki. And then the other guy's name is Mo'unga.
Yeah.
Mo'unga. Oh
I
my God.
know.
And I was
These
like, I
darn New
can't put these
Zealanders.
people.
Why can't they say our names right? Like our people's.
I know. And I'm like, dude, you've been doing this commentary for years and you're still calling it. Oh my goodness.
I know. I feel you.
Just,
I hear you. That yes. That right there.
I just can't. So yeah, nah. It's so funny because honestly, you can ask my husband. He's like, okay, and then he'll sit there and he goes, "Oh my gosh, it's Mo'unga." It sounds like we're calling him. Yeah, no.
Man, I'm really sorry. I took that conversation way out there.
No, that's all right.
That was so unnecessary.
Right,
forgive me.
I was for rugby because one of the things that I do is manage rugby team, senior team. So I had a break this year, but oh my gosh, for some reason I kept writing this girl's name wrong, and my friend kept correcting me. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm an islander, and I still can't write."
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But yeah. Anyway, so back to that line. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I absolutely. It's The only way that change can happen is sometimes you have to be in those uncomfortable spaces, and you know, people are going to call you Whiopoko or, you know, lots of other names that I've been called, which I won't repeat for the listeners because it's PG. Yeah, sometimes you just to ensure that we have, you know, that we are in that space in the first place. Yeah, so I always say to people, don't invite me to the table if you're not ready for what's to come.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna steal that. Right now. Like that makes that resonates with me much.
Just be prepared.
Yeah. Like that really, yeah. And I understand, you know, how you're saying, you know, sometimes it's people are at different places in terms of this, you know, journey, especially in educational spaces, right?
Yeah.
You know, like these conversations around you know, social justice and advocacy and activism and racism and all of that, you know, misogyny, all of that, you know. So, you know, I get that, but I also believe that there are just some people who are just like holding on for dear life, trying to avoid it all together, you know.
And the thing is, we also have to be respectful of that as well, because they're uncomfortable. That's not what they're used to. So I mean, you know, I know some people in my family, they're uncomfortable, and I think what it comes down to sometimes is lack of knowledge, lack of understanding when to apply it. And, you know, and sometimes once they know and get it, then they can speak up, but it's how they choose to speak up, you know, because I know for us too, it's like, no, I don't think so.
Okay, well, you know, because I've mentioned this before, I'm sure my listeners are so sick of this. You know, as teachers, we talk about educators being like, you know, you're always evolving, you know, and growth mindset, you know, another buzzword. You know, we're learners first and foremost, and so, you know, part of that is, yes, there are conversations where it's uncomfortable for all parties, for all stakeholders, but when we're talking about student-centered learning and our responsibility to the families, to the children that we teach, and, you know, to the young adults that we teach, like, you know, then it becomes well, are you willing to take that step, no matter how uncomfortable it is? I know I'm sounding probably a bit bots right now.
No, but it's true though. You know, it is absolutely true, because
we're lifelong learners.
yes. But and the thing is, when you're placed in a position of teaching kids, it's also a position of power. And how do you use that knowledge as power to empower your children?
Right.
Rather than holding on to it and then thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit uncomfortable.
Right.
Well, then use you use your people in your school, use your
Yes.
people in your community, and hey, guess what? Use your kids, because they can be
Yes.
also teachers themselves.
Absolutely.
So, so
Absolutely.
because what you're doing is you're teaching your children to then grow up and teach others, but you're teaching them to be part of a society that they can function in. And if you take that power away from them, well, you're failing them as a teacher. You're failing them as the educator. So yeah, no, I hold teachers in high regard, but I also hold them responsible in terms of, I've given my child to you from this time to this time. And I always find that the most successful teachers are the ones who engage not only in their learning, but how they function. Like, they get to know the child, what makes them think, what makes them feel, what's happening in the home. You don't necessarily to get personal in their home, but the things such as what you were saying, pronouncing their names properly,
well, understanding the
spelling it
different
properly.
well,
Yeah.
exactly, right. Are there macrons to their name?
Yes.
Is the Chinese pronunciation right? Is there a
Yeah.
Korean pronunciation?
Yeah.
And so but that's all part of like the idea, the different layers. I've talked about this before. The different layers
Yes.
of identity that a student brings to the classroom, like you said, the language they're speaking, the pronunciation, the name, the history behind their names,
Yes. And even their culture. So
cultural, religious, neuro, the type of learner they are. So those are all the different aspects. So it's like, if we are truly keeping it student centered, and we are, then it's, when we're doing that, then there can be equity. We can work towards equity in the classroom. But when it's all one way, and it's a one-way street, and the teacher is just holding firmly onto that power because, that I feel uncomfortable. But yet students are curious. They also have issues that they're passionate about. Anyway, let me stop, because I will go off on another tangent. This is not about me. Let's come back to Emeli.
But it's fantastic when you have students who start thinking about what's happening around them, happening around the world, and how it impacts them. It gives them opportunities to be critical thinkers. And I think, that's when I was talking about the culture, and you talk about the different level, the layers that come with them, and that it's okay to ask the questions.
When we talk about your legacy, and what this book truly means, not just to your family, your extended family, but this book is dedicated to your children. And I really like, knowledge comes with understanding what has been, and the power to change what will be. And I'm putting this in right now because of what we've just been talking about, but bringing it back to the book, bringing it back to the importance of this, and what this truly means for you as a mother, as an educator, as a writer, editor, publisher, who has been able to do this work and actually say to your kids, hey, look, this is me. This is a part of my story. This is for you. Tell us about the importance of this book in terms of your legacy.
Well, firstly, that dedication, Dahlia helped me with it. She was able to, a wordsmith, just
right.
When I originally wrote it, it sounded like that, but she just made it sound even better. But that was the purpose of it. It's, it was about making sure that my children understood that this wasn't just about the book and what Mum went through and what all of our people came through, but understanding the sacrifices that have been made for them and for others to come, and that the knowledge that we've received and that hopefully that we pass on to them, they will take it and they will use it to be able to benefit and bless others as well, and that knowledge continues on, and that the legacy is about the resilience of our people. The legacy is the strength of our people, the strength of our families, to continue to live in a country that hasn't always and still continues to not treat them properly. It's always easy to give up and hide away, but they deserve to be part. They're part of this country. you know. One of the things, and I'm hoping I'm not diverting here, but when we first moved to New Zealand, we lived in this house in Castle Street. And in front of the house is on my left side is a tree. And my three younger sisters, their placentas are planted under that tree. We had a ceremony there. And I remember my father saying, we've now moved to a new motu, a new whenua, and your placentas are always connected. You know, there's a connection to the land, and this is where your new roots will be. You know, this is your new roots where you will start your new life. And that new life, that's my children are part of that new life. And this book is just a reminder of that, you know, the planting of the placenta, the planting of our new lives in New Zealand, done years and years and years ago, and that our kids remember the sacrifices that were made so that they could be here. And I'm trying not to get emotional here. The other thing is that I have cancer. And so I just wanted my kids to have a little bit of a memory of mum. And I wanted to get this out and not die with it, to die with me. And it's made me think, right, however much time you have in life, just got to get things done, and so that your children will remember it. And for me, I believe, you know, the title is A New Dawn. It's a new beginning, and for my children, their new dawn will be how their lives carry on, you know, when mum's gone as well. So anyway,
sorry,
that's okay.
You know, you mentioned resilience and strength, and you know, as we've already been talking, you know, discussing right throughout this interview, this idea of the collective, and naturally we always refer to us, we, the collective, the village, the family. But I also wanted to point out, you know, you said strength and resilience, but that speaks of your journey. And I know you don't want me to put you on the spot like I did right at the beginning of the show.
I know.
But I'm going to put you on the spot again and say, you know, I must give you your flowers, because you are, you know, you personify resilience, you know, you are strength. And I think that it's, you know, when we always refer to the collective and the, you know, what we get from that, don't, you know, I just want to give you your flowers and say that you are amazing and you are power. You empower us, you inspire us. You know, this is only a chapter of your journey. But you said a new dawn, you know, you have said this is a new dawn. This is just another hill that you are climbing, you know. So yes, you are resilient. Let's not forget that. You are the epitome of strength.
Yeah.
So I just had
I didn't want to make it.
I had to put you out there again. I had to push you out.
I didn't want to make it by myself, and also didn't, you know, like I didn't want it to be a focus, because it is easy for people to go, oh, so you got cancer, so you did the story because of that. And I want to make it clear that the story was already in the development before I found out that I got cancer. If anything, it kind of spurred me along to make sure that the story was, however it came out. If it wasn't a new dawn, it would have definitely been something else, but the story would have come out regardless. And I wanted, I guess the thing that I've really continued to always think throughout this whole process is what my grandparents left me and what I want to, you know, give to my children, and also what my parents have worked hard for, regardless of their different pathways that they took. So I'll just, our kids having that knowledge, I just want, I think I'm having this, you know, this perfect world that in my mind all the time. and I can only speak from experiences that I never ever want not just my children but any of our pasefika kids, including Māori as well, to ever feel that they're not good enough to be what they want to be. To really understand their history as pasefika, and Niue and Tongan, because my kids are what we call fruit salad. I haven't used that word in a long time, but they're, my husband's half Tongan, Samoan, Chinese, and he's really good at speaking both languages, not Chinese or Cantonese. In fact, my kids are really good at speaking Cantonese, which is really funny, and Te Reo Māori. So, and I was like, what about Tongan and Niue and Samoan? And, I want them to be confident in who they are, because I know for a lot of our young people and even our older people, my generation, identity crisis, their identity, they don't know who they are, trying to fit into a society that is different from their home life. And so I just want them to be confident in that and never, ever lose, focus of who they are and what their makeup is and where they've come from, their line of, their family lines. Like you said, just a few minutes ago when you were talking about the carrying of the family name, the carrying, that and what that means to us. And I just want my children to take that legacy and roll with it, run with it. Don't lie on it.
Don't have a don't put the alarm on snooze like 5 times and then miss your lecture. Then miss your bus.
Hello, I just went off on a long ass tangent.
No, you're great. So self-care, this is a very important question that I ask everyone, because everyone that comes on the show is like super busy, they have families, they're just smashing their goals. But for you, what is your go-to, I'm going to treat myself? And I know you are probably the most selfless person, but okay, that's a bit of an evil laugh. Please tell us.
I don't, Dahlia keeps saying, oh, let's go and do a massage, go and do that stuff. But I don't,
what gives you joy? Self-care is also about what gives you joy. And
what gives me joy is, and of course this is not self-care, is knowing that my children are fed, they've got a roof over their head. And this is going to sound really bad, really bad. But sometimes I just like lying down on my bed or on my chair and watching videos on Facebook.
And that's okay. That can be a form of self-care. We're not judging anyone here at all.
But I also read when I can, and I'm reading this, this book that Patricia Grace has written about her life growing up and as an author, which was gifted to me as a present. And I've, still working through it because it's, busy life and stuff, but I've been really enjoying it. Yeah.
That's good. Good.
What else do I do? Clean my house.
That gives people joy, That gives people joy. Nothing wrong with that.
I do talk to my sister, my sisters, a lot, because they're up in Auckland, and Mum, because I'm quite close to my family. So whenever we can, I catch up with them. But my sister and I, my sister Giri, we're always constantly messaging each other. So. She goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm talking to you. What are you doing? And then, we're eating and talking to each other about what she's cooking, because she's always cooking and baking. So, yeah. And it goes to her little finger.
Your siblings must, you mentioned, Dad's response, your mum's, your mum was at the launch, and response from your siblings. Your family.
It was really good, because the thing is, my brother Folau, and it's really interesting. He changed his name to Malcolm because he just got tired of people mispronouncing his name. We call him Lau or Fo'ou, or, you know, especially my dad. I love it when my dad calls us by our names, just the pronunciation. Mum calls me Eme, which is cool. You know, it's that sense of endearment. But yeah, they loved the book. And so Fo'ou was with me at that time when the Dawn Raid came, and he was really young. And Giri, well, her name's Foketi. Her full name is Foketi Minoti, which is forget me not. And she was named after our Tongan grandfather's mother, who was a teacher and who was the first English-speaking Tongan to teach in the first English-speaking school, taught school in Tonga. Yeah, Tonga. Yeah, so, and I didn't know that until I started doing a little bit of research to find out my background with, you know, my family. And I found out that my our great grandmother, who she was named after, was called Forget Me Not, and it's Forget Me Not, but we've changed. When Giri was born, she was Forgeti Me Noti.
It sounds so good in Tongan.
I know.
But it does. It's a beautiful name, but it's just like a whole nother feeling when you say it in Tongan. Like
anyway, So and then of course there's Fo'ou. Fo'ou is journey, and then Alisi. I'm just going to name all my siblings now.
Shout out to
my siblings. And then of course there's you know, Alisi, Alice, and then Sile. I always thought it was Sarah, but hey, don't quote on me on it, Tongan people. So Sile, and then Joseph, or we call him Safa, but I named him Jonathan when he was young. Why? Then Mum changed it to Joseph to Sosefa. So and then Dad got remarried to this lovely lady. Her name's Carol, but we call her Aloha, which is Aroha, and she passed away earlier this year. But she was really good with my dad, and then they had 2 boys, and that's Finau and Corey. So eldest out of 8 siblings and lots of kids.
Get them all promoting the book. Get them out there promoting the book.
But my sisters, like, they've been promoting. They're really proud of me. But you know, our family have always been supportive of each other, encouraging of each other. I've always tried to encourage them to do whatever they want to do, and they'll be good at it. You know, sometimes they think they're older than me, and I'm like, go for it.
So, oh man, thank you for sharing about your siblings. Book recommendations. I know. I'm just what do you have for us? I mean, you have mentioned you love to read.
Yes,
that's what we do here. We give book recommendations when I remember.
Well, I'm a bit biased, but I also think that they're great books, and I was trying to find the other 2 books because there's a link to A New Dawn, and that's Tēne Samoa.
Yes.
By Dahlia. And the other one, which I couldn't find. Of course, was the one that her husband worked on, but she also worked on is Tama Samoa. And, you know, it's 2022, and there's the stories from way back then is still the same stories now. So I recommend them both. And, of course, absolutely A New Dawn. So
A New Dawn. A New Dawn, everyone. Sorry, Dahlia, your books are in my bookcase in the other room. I don't want to leave midway through the podcast to run over there. I should have been better organized. I know. I would do better.
I couldn't even find because I realized I couldn't find Tama Samoa is because my daughter has it, and they read and they sleep with the books next to them. So
that's cool.
And cool. Got to do everything to promote Mila's books, you know.
Yes.
So
absolutely. I'm when you mentioned earlier there's something there are things in the works. What is next for you? What can you mention, or even linked to your job? Like what dreams do you still have in terms of being an author and writer? Like what do you hope to pursue? Are you able to share anything? If not, that's okay.
Yep.
I'm so excited for you.
So on the left side, currently working through a couple of school journals, which is they're at final art stage, just can't go too much into it, but they're going to be out soon, working on those. And then, of course, with Dahlia's work, which she's posted and that I can speak about, is the poetry by the students.
I
Which is exciting.
know.
Yeah, so I'm working with her. Of course, her team
Yep.
that she's got, we're working on that as well. So, yeah, and then as I already wrote another story, which was bizarre because normally, I have stories that just take forever. But
Wow.
wrote another story and a poem, and then something happened to me the other, 2 nights ago.
Right.
And so I've put some of that to paper and
That's
trying
awesome.
to see how that's going to look. Excuse me. How it's going to be shaped and stuff. And I think most importantly is just to live life. Yeah.
Man, that I'm so excited. I'm honestly, and I know you weren't able to share a lot. It's really just, there are things in the work, which is what excites me. You've mentioned some upcoming projects already. And I just, I will continue to, put it on blast, put you guys on blast.
We
put
appreciate it.
ᴅᴅил authors on blast. Like we have to, so people can realize and understand that there are many of you out there working to get those stories out, to get our stories, by Pasifika, for Pasifika, but hopefully to also engage non-pasefika and really just hopefully get fruitful conversations, get readers curious about our stories, our experiences, and things like that. I before I go on and on,
when are you going to start writing?
I just I don't know.
Can I just say something? Because you know how and that's brilliant, because the thing is, I encourage you, if you feel you've got an idea, put it down to paper. One of the best things that Joy Cowley said to me, who's a famous New Zealand writer and the most loveliest person too. I asked her, what she did in terms of writing and stuff, and she said, I just write my ideas down. If something pops up, I write it down on paper. And I could be doing gardening or something, I'll write it down on paper, and then I'll go to it later and then start making sense of it and start shaping it into a story. And I think that's once you get that in your head, and how, because writers are different. People are, they can find lots of different ways on how they write stories. But that was one of the, best things that I got out of it. And also I got from my mentor, Don Long. And he just said, put it down on paper and then go back to it later and then just start molding it and shaping it. And then that's what good editors are there for, to make sense of it and make sure that your reader will get it and understand it. Because it's really interesting, because some people think, oh, my story is really good. And the thing is, there's some really good ideas, but how it's written or structured, you just need a little bit of work. As someone said, and not to be in a rude way, massage it into a fantastic story.
Right.
And I'm looking at him going, massage? But after a bit of a while, you get it. So I just wanted to put that there, because I know when we're talking about my role, I said, have a form of English. Hello, coming from this island girl. But also, you can write it in your own language.
Yeah.
That's what I forgot to say, is write it in the language that you feel comfortable in. And I'll tell you now, we will find people or editors to make make sense of it if it comes out in English, because what we try to keep is to keep it as authentic as possible. And there are lots of publishers who publish in their own languages in the Pacific as well as here in New Zealand. So yeah, I just wanted to, because I just don't want people listening and going, oh, my English ain't that good. Well, neither is mine, but hey, I'm published thanks to the amazing editor that I have.
Yes, please, everyone. No, I didn't even have to say please. Go out and buy this, buy the book, support it online. support #support pasefika authors. I'm
Yeah.
forever making up my own hashtags, but I'm like,
You and Dahlia are good.
I'm about that hashtag life, sadly, but that's
I
teacher.
must be,
It's the
I
teacher
must
in
be
me.
old. Because I'm like, what hashtag should I write? I'm like, let's take
I'm
Dahlia's ones.
I'm a hashtag like everything, like just please, this is. I've really had to kind of hold back. I think I told you off camera, like I have just such a bad habit of getting so excited when I'm talking to a guest, and
Yes.
I'm very, I'm aware that this is a new book, and I had to think carefully about my questions. I had to think carefully because I don't want to give, I don't want to like be giving away stuff and people are like, oh, you pretty much told us a story. But I had to really, really kind of like calm down, Rosa, calm down.
Yeah.
Now's not the time to start giving away, but you will not regret this. This is an educational resource. There's obviously the history behind it. For non-pasefika, you won't go wrong with this. We've got so many amazing Pacific Island writers out there who are publishing and doing everything on their own, with their village and support crew. So please support our people, man. That's what's up. And then, Emeli, I really, it's the time of the show where I give my thanks, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming into the space, it's and sharing, first of all, sharing your role, your job, as an educator, but through, books, and we love books here. So thank you for sharing that part of your life. I'm so excited to hear about that, and I feel like I'm gonna start researching. I'm like, oh, this sounds like such a cool job. I would love to do something like that. Like that's what I was thinking when you were talking. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, the exciting thing is, which I also didn't say, is a lot of the publishers who work for educational side are ex-teachers, and so they bring.
I need a job. No.
Yes.
Hire me now. Thank you very much.
I look at it this way. I'm not going to be doing this for the rest of my life, as you know. And so there needs to be, because as far as I know, and now we've got Dahlia, for years and years and years, I was the only person of what I do in the whole of New Zealand. And so I always think, as Don told me, there has to be a succession plan. So I don't want to hold this to myself. There are now lots more Pasifika editors in their own right, doing work and working under Don. And so I encourage you to have a think about it, because like I said, you're a teacher, you bring in that educational side. And what's the other thing about, other than just producing the resources, we produce teachers' notes. And that's where also your experience comes in. You know what your students need and what they should be working on. And and so a lot of them are ex-teachers and working on it and learning the world of publishing. And some of them have been writers as well. So something for you to think about. Maybe even come and work with Dahlia. Dahlia.
So yes, that got me excited. And then just to again bring it back to you, who our important guest that is with us today. Thank you for being vulnerable, coming into the space and just sharing your life journey, the experience, parts of the experience that make up this book, your history, your family. Thank you for sharing that. Like, it's such an honor. Like, I've been waiting for this for so long, and I know I was just, I said to you and Dahlia, I'm going to wait, because I know you have both been on the road, online, making things happen, and I've loved seeing that. So I was just like, no, I'm gonna wait, and when it's time, it's gonna be the time. So I'm glad that now is the time. It's I'm just
so much for having me.
That's all from me. I'm gonna hand it over to you to wrap up the show. You've already shared so many final words, and encouragement and
No.
motivation and inspiration. So I don't know what else you might have in there,
No.
but I'll hand it over to you to wrap up our show.
Oh my goodness, no pressure. Just thank you, Fkaulahi Mahaki for having me. It's honestly been an absolute pleasure and honor to be on your show. Like, seriously, I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? Because I'm like watching your podcast going, man, these people are cool.
You're cool. Everyone that
You're
comes on is
amazing.
super cool. You're one of them.
So, yeah, thank you so much. And to be able to talk about a new dawn and what it means to me and what importantly it means to, our community. And I hope that it, what I didn't talk about before, here I go, is just the discussion, that talanoa around it. And, talking about our history and everything that was felt, but the importance to heal as well and allow healing. It's not for everybody, and I'll be honest, it's not for everybody. And this is not to push anybody,
right.
but, we've got, some amazing kids and whatever they put their minds to. And I think that's one thing I've learned as a parent is what success looks like for us, for me as a parent. Back in the days, it's to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, all of those traditional roles. But my goodness, our people are amazing people in the arts and the crafts, and you can be successful in lots of different ways. But every single bit contributes to our village that we're all part of. So, yeah. So thank you so much for having me and for pushing and promoting A New Dawn and Mila's books. I really appreciate it.